This is episode number 2 of the Feed Me, Fuel Me podcast. Welcome to the Feed Me, Fuel Me podcast. My name is Michael Anders, fitness entrepreneur and motivational speaker, alongside my co-hosts Jeff Thornton and Jason Sani. Each week, we bring you an inspiring person or message related to our 4 pillars of success: manifestation, business, fitness, and nutrition. Thank you for allowing us to join you on your journey. Now let's get started. Welcome to episode 2 of the Feed Me, Fuel Me podcast. Mike Anders here with Jeff Thornton and Jason Sani. And today we're going to talk about the fear of process and some of the means and mechanisms to get from idea to actualization without getting lost in the minutia in the middle. Now, over the last couple of weeks since we had our last podcast, episode 1, I dropped an ebook, the 30 days of and the manifestation of affirmation. And as a result, I've had a lot of conversation with folks about, chasing their dreams and, more importantly, why they haven't. And one of the common themes in these conversations is they know what they have. It's a genuine concept and it's worth pursuing. And they know what the end state looks like. And then they see everything that they have to accomplish in the middle. And it's so overwhelming. It becomes this huge monster, this daunting task. And then because of that fear, they're just like, you know what, it's not worth it. I'm just going to hang back and keep doing what I've been doing. And it's like, it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't. Yeah, it's not being able to pull the trigger is the worst part.
Right.
We got to be able to tee that up, and that's what people have to be able to see is, the result from both. You know what I mean? And I think I heard a reference from, it was probably Tony Robbins or somebody that said you really have to own that vision of what result are you going to get either way, and when the feeling, the outcome, if that overpowers the feeling of staying the same, that's when you're going to make that shift. But you have to be in love with that type of feeling. And for some people, it's like reaching that level of desperation. Like, look, I can't stand to just barely be getting by anymore or whatever. But, what I see a lot, it's the same thing. It's, I see it with clients from the nutrition perspective and the training perspective is it's the wouldn't it be nice philosophy. They look around at somebody else and they say, oh gosh, I need to lose some weight. I ought to do that, or I should do that type of thing. And it gets into that wouldn't it be nice, but what's connected? Oh, that's just so much work. I don't even know. I'll do it. I'll start it down the road. This and that, and it's how do we identify that the gap that bridges that, the bridge that takes you over there, and then that's there's courage involved. There has to be, to rise to the occasion, and knowing that we will rise to the occasion. So like, what have you seen with the people, when you interview people or ask people, whether it's clients that are coming to you or, just examples that got them there? What was it that finally pushed them over? Was it a level of urgency? Was it
I think, the desperation element is huge in terms of taking those initial steps. But I think what actually makes or breaks the process and the follow through ultimately is the ability to let go, and coming full circle with the idea that you don't have to wear all the hats. You don't have to do it all by yourself, and you have to create a cast that plays to a creative genius that is not your own. For example, me and Jeff were talking a little earlier about web development, right? So I just launched michaelanders.com. It's a completely separate platform for stuff that I want to talk about as a blogger, and I put that together myself. Well, CrossFit PHX has been around. This is year 4, and there's been 4 variations of the website, right? None of which did I put together myself, right? I hired people to build it. I bartered membership to have it built. Whatever I could do to afford a quality product in that moment is what I did, whether I paid for it outright, private training, membership to the gym, whatever it took to get it done is what I did. And all the while, though, I would kind of hang back and learn the process along the way without having my hands directly in it. And, so I could focus on building the gym, which is ultimately what I really wanted to do, instead of sitting at my desk and beating my head against the wall, trying to figure out how to put pictures on the internet, have somebody else do it. And through 4 iterations of the gym website, I now have the tools and the ability in my own toolbox to build my own website that's as functional as I need it to be right now.
And that's powerful. And I might address or give an example of why some people maybe have been limiting themselves because they think, well, I need to save up this, imaginary figure of $10,000 to pay somebody to do this.
Right.
No, like you said, by any means necessary, whatever you're going to do, you're going to figure out how to do it. And I think that's what people need to sink in. Like, look at other examples if you need to, but realize that whatever's stopping you is there's a way around it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like you said, you could barter something. You have something that offers value to somebody else, or whatever the case is.
I mean, Jeff's a prime example with everything that he's doing in the social media space. He's got his full-time career in tech, and doing all that stuff for, the companies that he contracts with. And all the while he's, I've watched the evolution of I Am Jeff Thornton, where he's turned a hobby into a career, which he's, essentially transitioning into. And I, definitely want you to speak on this. While you had your career, you were putting together the tools multimedia wise and getting piecemealing this understanding of social media and content generation and audio visual dynamics that has led to, you're on day 80 of your vlog now.
Right. Yeah.
So how did you go from a full-time career to this transitional period that you're in now?
Right. For me, man, I always sit back and study other people who have already paved the way, you look at, actually, if you can't find a mentor in person, you go online, you read books, and you figure out what they're using. So I always use those type of triggers. Okay, I like the structure, the way these people do certain things. And so I've developed a task of, even if I don't understand it at that point, I'm going to learn the process. For me, I learn the process before I delegate, because once I do delegate that task, I can't be snowed, right? And so that's something I've really played. That's been a huge part of me growing within, building my brand out in a way. But for me, it's just the part of taking action. It's whether you have the money or not to afford the equipment that you want, find a way to get the stuff that you need no matter what, because like Jason's reference, you're never going to have that amount of money that you want to do what you need to do. There's never going to be a perfect time to launch the perfect product. I mean, it's a process of iteration. Like you said, you develop 4 websites, and you now developed your own website through that process, and it's going to continue to develop. And for me, it's 80 day of the vlog. Are these vlogs perfect? Hell no, right? It's just but you're putting the content out there, you're letting people consume, and then you're getting feedback while you're doing it. So people are like, okay, try this. And you're like, okay. And you're staying dynamic. And that's the part where I figure there's where we mentioned people to get that analysis paralysis of I need the perfect equipment. I need this. It's if you have a cell phone, you can start it right now. There's nothing really holding you back from creating the life that you want. Sure. It's just that you have to take that step forward, and you have to be willing to take that feedback from people, whether you deem it negative or positive. It's just feedback at that point. And once you can just sort of sift through the information that find what helps you get to your path, that's where you just work from. And I think that's been a huge part for me as far as building things out on the side. And it takes a lot of time. I mean, you have to work your days doing your normal career, but then on the side, what are you doing at night or early in the morning? Are you getting up early? You're losing a little bit of sleep to move towards your passions or what you want to do.
I think that speaks volumes of, a lot of the people listening in on this podcast is, they do what they need to do to pay the bills, but there's stuff that they'd rather be doing. Right. And whether that generates an additional income or potentially becomes another career, that's not the point. There's things out there that play to your creative genius that, you could more than likely specialize in that you're not able to take advantage of because you don't feel like you're equipped or have all the things in order to jump off and make it happen. And in actuality, something that I adopted while I was still on active duty with the Marine Corps, and I knew that this was a platform that I wanted to stand on, I took the stance that once I decided to pull the trigger on next level performance and fitness consulting, that I, whether it was send an email, write a workout, or ask a question of an entrepreneur, I was going to do something every single day, no matter how big or how small. There was no scale. I was going to do one thing.
Right. So you're not in that idle mode. You're constantly moving somewhere.
That put me one step forward in the creation of, where I'm at today. And when you remove the scale from it all, because I think everybody thinks that, there's this epic event that drives things forward.
Right.
There's like this cataclysmic thing that happens, and then boom, you are where you're at.
Right.
And it's compounding interest. In reality, it's investing a penny every single day.
Right.
And then you eventually get to where you're at. It's not, a lump sum of 10 G's.
Right.
That is rarely the case
Right.
in this entrepreneurial space that we find ourselves in. But it's also not the case in the pursuance of happiness. You're just constantly contributing whatever you have in the moment, instead of, trying to sandbag or stumble upon this suitcase full of cash, metaphorically speaking, to create this huge deposit that, creates this life that you ultimately want. It doesn't work that way. It's constantly just, a little bit at a time, whatever you can afford, whether it's 5 minutes or 5 hours, but you're taking that free space in your life and putting it towards that ultimate goal.
Right.
I love it. And it's movement. It's progression. So you're moving somewhere. And, we talk about feedback. How do you get feedback? You need to be taking some sort of action and then asking for it. So if you're in an idle space, like you say, let's say we got ideas, like we want to start this, I got this business idea, I want to do this. Until you're moving somewhere, you're not really going to be able to get good, accurate feedback until you're actually moving. Because when you're moving, then somebody can say, like, we'll take a direction, just a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. But if you're moving, it's too challenging for somebody else that's been in that spot to say, all right, here's where you need to go, because they don't know where your head is at or whatever. So I think that's the biggest thing is start sailing, at least you're moving, and that's going to tell the universe I'm ready to roll, whatever, and then you can rise to that occasion. But it's, the brain wants to adapt to those different types of environments and those challenges. But you have to have a vision of something you're trying to do, and then you starting to move in that direction, then you can start to ask for feedback. And then the people are going to give you more valuable feedback because they've seen that you've taken an initiative. Because I think we've all seen the people that have came to us and maybe ask for advice, and maybe it's just business advice, or like somebody might come to Jeff and say, hey, I want to do something that you're doing. But it's like, until they've shown that they've taken that action, it's like, how serious can you take this person? Same thing, somebody that wants to start training or start a business, it's like, when they've taken that initiative, now it's like, all right, this person's for real. Now I can give them some advice of where they need to go. But it's like, you got to put that foot forward. And it's easier said than done. But I think that is going to tell the universe and everybody around you that you're for real. It's great. I mean, you can have great intentions and the wouldn't it be nice types of things, as I was saying. But it's like you moving in that direction. Like Jeff with his vlog, it's like, step one, you got a phone with a camera on it, like upload a video onto YouTube. A lot of people are doing it that way. And then as you go, then the different elements that you can upgrade and improve the sound quality and improve the editing and so on. But shoot, like Dur said, it's like we have the ability. It's within us. It's just
totally.
It's actualizing it.
Right.
And that doesn't take as much as people think. It's sometimes just lighting that fuse a little bit. It doesn't take this crazy amount of courage. It's like, get moving a little bit. Yeah. And we'll rise.
Right. And like Tony Robbins, he used the example of like a plane leaving an airport and landing in a certain destination, say LA to Hawaii or whatever. He's like, the plane's path is never just from LA straight to Hawaii. It's constantly going left and right of its destination, but it's making those minor adjustments as it gets to that point to reach its destination. And that's how success is. It's not, you're never just going to have a straight shot like, okay, I'm beelining there. Right. You're always going to constantly be moving left or right of that. But as long as you stay within that range, you're going to reach your target. And I think people, they want the pieces in place, like we were talking earlier, Durs and I, is that they want to say, I I don't understand video, audio, this, and this. It's like none of us do. Like with this podcast, for instance, we've gone through. None of us are audio engineers or anything, but we've taken the steps to say, okay, we have to learn this software in a week to get this podcast up. And then you continue to grow you're gonna stub your toe, you're gonna run your head against the wall. But I mean, it's the process of being able to take that risk and dive in and just say, heck, we'll figure it out as we go. It may not be perfect, but it at least is moving towards a direction that we want to get towards.
You know, everybody I know that's, you know, in an area of extreme success, be it business, family, relationships, fitness, whatever, until they figured out the system that worked for them, the one thing they all have in common is they jumped and built a parachute on the way down.
Right.
You know, they kind of left themselves no other option but to figure it out.
Right.
You know, whether they succeeded or failed, that wasn't the point. It was, I don't have any other option. And it doesn't have to be that dire, you know, or, you know, don't interpret that from a life or death standpoint. But, you know, if you want this thing to fly, you got to put some wings on it.
Right.
You know, and I would be remiss if I didn't tell everybody tuning in right now to go back and, you know, find the Facebook Live of our very first podcast and look at the shit show that was. Yeah. But what's awesome about that and the fact that it's out there in the space is we committed.
Right.
Yeah. That to me is the thing that you have to have first and foremost is you have to be willing to commit to A, yourself, and B, be willing to put yourself out there, good, bad, or indifferent. And then, you know, just like we've been saying, take that feedback and learn from those things. I don't want to call them mistakes because that's not the case, but take those notes and improve upon them. You know, immediately after we did that first podcast, I was a guest on Barbell Business, and I got to see their operation as their that crew is 4 or 5 years. Yeah. You know, every week without missing. Right. Knocking out podcasts left and right, and seeing how streamlined and polished their show is. And I'm like, okay, now I have a frame of reference. Yep. And I know how far we have to go to get to this level. Right. And once you have that, you know what I mean? Now you're in the game. Yeah. But for that experience to have any meaning, we had to do that first one.
Right. Yep. That's hot. I mean,
I like that.
Because then you can see behind the scenes thing of somebody filming a movie, this and that, and it's like, oh, that looks cool. I kind of see that there's all these people playing these roles, but it's like it's different. If you actually went out and tried to film a movie, then you can compare that to the steps that you're doing and that you're not doing. And that's hot with what you said is, you know, we made that initial impression, and then now when you go see somebody else, you're like, oh, wow, I can like relate to what I should have been doing in these areas of improvement. And it's real, and now you're connected to that compared to like, okay, I see. Because I mean, we could you can go pick up a book of how to start a business, this and that, and it's like, okay, I see how you get started, but until you try it, that puts you in the game. Your skin's in the game. Now you have the experience, and now you know where to adjust. And just quickly to add, it's like the analogy of riding a bike, you know. And I mean, I think we can all relate to whether if you can't ride a bike, you can swim or something. That's something that's just automatic now. You can hop on a bike. Some people are more familiar than others based on the amount of like skill and practice that they've put into it. But the first time you did it, it was scary. You're uncomfortable. Maybe you had training wheels or whatever the case is, but it's super foreign. I don't know if you guys can relate back to this, but think about this. You got on this bike, these two wheels, you're moving. You know you could crash or it's going to run into something. Everything felt awkward. But then over time, you got more comfortable, you got more familiar. Now it's automatic, but you learned more things. And now it's like if you wanted to go on a race or ride up, go mountain biking, go up a hill, you still have different areas where you need to learn and improve, but the basics are there because you jumped in, you took charge. And that's that childlike curiosity and like wonder that a lot of people lose as they grow up. You know, they just think, I'm just going to go into what so-and-so should be doing and wouldn't it be nice type of thing. But it's like if we can stick back to like, I'm just going to jump in and try it and learn from it and have fun with it and embrace that excitement,
Right.
you know, and that courage that comes in there.
Right. That's exactly right, man. I don't know. It's just like, have you noticed that, so going back to what you're both saying, that once you take that dive of actually going towards that goal that you're trying to achieve, it's sort of like the universe brings in the pieces that fill in the parts of the puzzle. Because like for you getting on the podcast at that time and bringing in people in your lives, like how the heck did I meet up with Jason? But it was before the podcast, I never knew Jason, you know. But then when Durs and I said, okay, we need to start this up, all the pieces started to come together about how we're going to formulate this idea. And I feel like we have the perfect team now just through just taking that step forward, you know what I mean? It's just weird how things work out like that. To me, it still blows my mind. And the part of thinking like, man, I don't understand how these things can happen in life, but it's just being able to move towards that point of overcoming that fear, and you find out it does attract.
Part of it, I mean, quickly here too, it's the same thing like the radio station. Imagine when you had your first car and you're tuning in, trying to pick up a little bit of a station, you don't have the best connection, and it's like, that's kind of the idea. You're trying to tune in to like say 98.3 or whatever, and you're picking up a little bit, but it's not super clear. And it's like until you make the commitment that you're rolling down that's when it gets clear. And now you have that connection. You're tuned in on that type of station. And it's the same thing. Right now you're only picking up bits and pieces, but when you can dial that in,
right.
And that's what I noticed the difference of like saying, you know, wanting to do something when you bring a team of people. Now it's like that much more powerful, and then things are going to be clear,
right.
And you're hearing things the way they need to be, and you can adjust, and it's that different connection. Now you're getting a signal from point A to point B,
right,
and that makes it real.
Well, you know, they talk about when, you know, you commit to something, you don't ever have to voice that you're committed. Your actions will show your commitment, you know, depending on the lifestyle that you were living, you know. Prior to commitment, there's a lot of changes that go into, you know, pursuing a goal and taking massive action, and people are going to take notice, whether it's, you know, on any given night where you would go out and get, you know, shit-faced, and now you're like, no, I'm going to stay in and, you know, work on some stuff. Like people are going to notice that those things, and it's only after you commit to, you know, said goal that the process starts to manifest for you. But if you're sitting in the bleachers, you know, Monday morning quarterback and everything, and trying to put together the perfect plan, you know, all you're doing is putting yourself further and further behind. You know, I think it was Patton that said, a not so perfect plan executed now is a lot better than the perfect plan executed tomorrow.
Right.
You know, and I think that's kind of, you know, one of the maxims that, you know, I truly learned through my Marine Corps experiences, the 70% solution. I don't need all the answers. I just need enough information to know yes or no. And then from there, you figure out the process. And, you know, the same maxim is true in business, in fitness, in nutrition. You know, you just need enough information to decide whether it's worthwhile. And then all you got to do is convince yourself to take that first step.
Right.
We're the whole history of the world shows progression and just moving in a direction of improving everything around us, from technology to how we relate and communicate and so on. And it's like, that's the same thing with us. It's like, how are we bettering ourselves on a regular basis? And bettering yourself is making sure that you're happy and you have the peace of mind that what you feel like you should be doing, you are actually doing. If there's an idea or a thought in your head like, gosh, man, I would like to do that, or something like, that's the reason. That's the universe trying to tell you something, and like that's a sign that you got to move in that direction. If you're just an idle, you got to check yourself there, and maybe journal every now and then, and just find out where you're going. Like if you're going in that same route that you're going right now, you're going to be happy. Or like, I mean, really, what are you waiting for? But you have to have that relationship that life's going to taste so much better when you actually leaped out there and took that leap of faith and that feeling, and then people respect that courage, and that there's a lot of respect in like moving in a direction of following what you're doing. You're going to build more compassion and respect for yourself, and you're going to get it from everybody else.
That's a amazing point, in that whether you succeed or fail, the people are going to applaud you for simply making the effort at all.
Right. Oh, yeah.
You know, everybody thinks that, you know, they look at, you know, these epic decisions from one of two standpoints, either the what if I fail category or the excitement of what if this thing blows up?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and there's way more people in the what if I fail camp than there are the people that get fired up if it, you know, under the question of what if I succeed?
Woo!
And what you find in both those camps is whether you fail or succeed, knock it out of the park, the fact that you made that effort in the first place, nobody's going to look down on you.
Right.
And the folks that would don't fucking matter.
Right.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the fact that you made that effort in the first place, people are going to respect the hell out of you for it because you're now doing something. You've done something that, you know, most people would never do. Just by making that initial effort, you're now in a category of you're now in the minority. You know,
That's true.
You went for it instead of playing it safe. You know, and there's varying degrees of that leap, but ultimately, you still took action where most people would have just remained in neutral.
Yep. Well, let's talk about with what you're doing with the vlogging. I mean, you got an example of that and doing the bodybuilding type of things. Those are two of all the things you've been doing that you're putting yourself out there. And I mean, it'd be easy to get caught up in that little zone of what are people going to think, or this or that, or the people around me, is there going to be this judgment or whatever. But it's like, what got you to actually take that step forward? Like, what was the belief that was like, man, this is worth it because it's worth it to me, or whatever the case is? Like,
you know,
explain your motive there.
I think it came to a point of I'm not going to get to where I want to go by standing here in a way. And that's the mindset I came to. It's like, I always said I want to better myself in public speaking, getting on camera, being able to do vlogs. And for a year, I sat there, told my brother, boy, like, oh, I'm going to start vlogs. And he'd be like, just do it, you know. And it came to a point where I was like, I'm just lying to myself because I have the pieces in place to get this thing done. And I'm just having the fear of what everybody else is going to say about me. I was like, what people say about you, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's because for you to become an influencer or a motivator in somebody's life, maybe you don't influence your direct circle, but you have the power to influence others outside, right? And it just came through just iterating. So my journey started on Snapchat when I started getting comfortable talking on camera again. Then I was like, okay, I want to evolve from Snapchat and start doing, you know, these vlogs. And from there, man, I saw myself growing into such a bigger character and getting my message out there. And I became confident in myself to say, man, this is the message I have and this is the path I want to go towards that I've been running from for so long, that it's just time for me to make the jump because I've done all these pieces. I know I can get there. Now it's just like, there's no more fear of failure. It's like, where can I get if I push myself out of my comfort zone at this point? Because I keep on doing stuff that's so comfortable to me. Anybody can sit there behind a computer, do emails, and you know this. How can I
low-hanging fruit?
Yeah. How can I push myself to the next level to where I expand myself so far that others look at me like, damn, this guy, he has no fear of what anybody's going to say about him. He's just going to take action and take charge of his life at that point.
Right.
So I think that's where it started for me initially. It was a process of, I think, over a year and a half. But it started with little pieces for me. It was starting with Snapchat was the first. It was easy because, you know, you do 24-hour story, disappears. But you start building up your voice because of the biggest thing I hear from people. I don't know how you talk on camera because I hate hearing my voice. And then I tell them you have to fall in love with the sound of your voice because that's all you have in this world. If you don't love the sound of your voice, who is going to love the sound of your voice, right?
Sure.
And so once you're able to dissect that and say, you know, that's a part of like loving yourself, loving your body, loving your mind. You have to work with what you're given. You can't say, I want to sound like this guy because you can never sound like that person. Tell your story, and it's gonna affect the people it needs to affect, and you're gonna attract what you need to. But that's where it started all for me. But yeah, it was all building blocks at that point.
You got that momentum going.
Yeah, I got the momentum going. Always been a really confident person, but it's just like you said, putting it out there, being able to expose yourself, being open to criticism. It was something that you become, as you get older, you become more fearful of. When you're younger, it's like, you could do. But then, I mean, it's like you see other people succeeding in this world.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, if they can succeed, why can't I?
Right.
Doing the same type of stuff.
Sure.
You know.
And, one thing that I can appreciate about your story, Jeff, just because, our communities are so intertwined through the gym, is as watching your Snapchat evolution and then that transition into vlogging on the daily. One thing I've heard in the gym from one class to the next is, and this is validation that you're moving in the right direction, is good or bad, when people are talking about you, you are in the game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so huge. You're not in the stands. You're on the field making the plays. And that's one thing that I can appreciate about your journey from the outside looking in, is that whether it was in jest or admiration, people were talking about you, man. It's like, people walk in the gym and, we just so happen to look a little similar. So, but, people were like, oh, man, did you see Jeff's Snapchat? And, like, your intro is, like, famous in the gym now. What's up, Snap?
Yeah.
And, but, like, in the beginning, when you start anything, you're going to be met with some kind of opposition, right? People are going to be, poking fun or, kind of laughing at you and with you at the same time. Like, oh, good job, but this shit is hilarious, right? They want to see, it's almost this innate controversy that the universe puts in your path to kind of assess how committed you are to this new process, right? And if you can weather that storm, and depending on your personality type and where you come from and how how much you've been through prior to these efforts, you're going to react to that in different ways. But however big or small that storm is to you, if you see that all the way through, eventually all those jokes and shit turn into admiration.
Right.
Like, oh man, like nobody talks about vlog 1. Everybody's talking about vlog 80. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing. When I was on Barbell Business, it was really funny. They're like, dude, good. They watched, the pilot, if you will, of Feed Me, Fuel Me. They're like, you know what? Good on you for getting in the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you did it.
Take some positives from it.
Like,
Right.
We didn't have shit. We had 3 cell phones and a camera.
Right.
You know what I mean? And ran it on Facebook Live just to see, beta.
Right.
But we're in the game. I can't tell you how many people just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And then eventually, without any action behind those words, it starts to fall on deaf ears. But your journey in social media and vlogging has been just amazing to watch, because now you're in that category where all the jokes have turned into admiration. And being aware of what's happening and watching you push through that, like that middle ground where it's like 50-50, people are in your corner or people are waiting for you to fail or quit. That's the deal breaker for most people. They can't see it all the way through to just till the support comes.
Right.
They're in this space where they're waiting for help. And what's really happening is the universe wants to see how much you're willing to do on your own. And then the support comes.
Right.
But day in and I love it. There's a process day in, day out, so you don't get overwhelmed. Just think about, like, your episode 80, for example. So let's say you knew that if day 1 isn't amazing, at least it was something, and then you're on to day 2, and then you got day 3, and you got day 4. And that's something to be proud of, that you stuck with it. There's consistency, and you were moving on. And that let the world know, like, hey, I'm in this. This is what I'm doing. I'm going somewhere. So it isn't always necessarily about hitting a huge achievement. The achievement is that you've started and you're moving in the right direction. It's like when I got into speaking about what I'm passionate about with nutrition and health and giving workshops, it's like I would tell everybody around me, the people that knew me close knew how passionate I was and that I had all this knowledge and education. But when I'd meet somebody else, it's like I almost expected them to know that, but they didn't. And I remember one of my buddies just told me, like, clear out front. I was like, he's like, what's your goal? And I was like, I want to be the go-to source when people think about nutrition and health and, put it into application. I want to be that person. He's like, he's like, I don't see that in you. And what I mean by that, and don't take it offensive, he's like, I wouldn't know that if I didn't know you personally. He's he's like, so you need to let the world know that, you know what I mean? And it's how you're going to do that. And so I had the faith of knowing that like it was going to take going out there in public and giving some talks. Maybe people would show up, maybe people wouldn't show up. But I did that enough and was posting stuff on social media to where it was like, look, I'm moving in this direction. And now I want to be, like, it's going to be undeniable that is where my passion is, because the action is showing what I'm doing over and over again. But if I just relied on saying like, oh, well, I tried and people didn't give me that action or that feedback that I wanted, it's like, and that's what happens with a lot of people. They go to a workout and they're sore, they feel a little unfamiliar and awkward or whatever, and then they stop or they start something and it feels a little awkward and it's like, no, that's natural. That's the feeling. That's you got to embrace that feeling weird, but overcoming it is the beautiful little piece of momentum that you actually need.
Sure.
Because it's real. And now you're in. And like that is something to take so much more pride for, that you actually moved in and let the world know, even if it's just whispering to the world, but you let it know that this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then you can grow from there.
You know, the volume analogy is awesome. You know, whether you're shouting it from the rooftops or, you know, it's just a little whisper, you know, just putting it out there. You know, I tell people all the time, you know, if you've got something big going on up there, start with your circle of influence, you know, the people that you trust.
Right.
So even if you were, you know, terrified of it blowing up in your face, these aren't the people that are going to, you know, they'll tell you how they feel behind closed doors.
Right.
They're not going to get on Facebook and let everybody know that you got the worst idea.
Put you on
blast.
blast.
You know what I mean? Change your address to Front Street. But, you know, start there, you know, and then, you know, those people like and trust you, and they'll give you the freedom of movement to test your idea, you know, and, you know, it starts with little pieces of confidence that turn into, like, you know, that give you the grand stage with all the lights for your presentation.
Right.
You know, start with, you know, presenting your idea or whatever on a whiteboard for just your family or your boys or the members at your gym or whatever. You know, if the idea of a national stage freaks you out, don't start there.
Right.
Right? Like use you know, smaller, more tangible settings for where you're at in the moment to give you the confidence, so that, you know, should you be blessed enough and take enough action to get to that national stage, it no longer freaks you out.
Right.
You are now prepared, and you have enough of a foundation
the tools
to knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
You know, everybody thinks that you have to, you know, there's no such thing as overnight success.
No
you
way.
know, CrossFit PHX is 15 years in the making. And the CrossFit PHX of 2016 is not the CrossFit PHX of 2013 when we opened the doors the day one.
Right.
You know, there's an evolutionary process that takes place. And people need to understand that as long as it doesn't matter whether you're sprinting to the finish line or you're walking at a snail's pace, ultimately you're still moving forward.
Right.
So it doesn't matter.
Small, consistent actions lead up to major things exponentially, you know.
Right.
And like for you, Sonny, like with your business and growing, like I see how you build out your YouTubes and amazing video, amazing content on your websites and everything. What was the point where you decided that, you know, you were working for a company before? What was the point where you decided, like, this is it for me, like this is where I want to go? And what was your vision and your process towards getting towards where you are now and where you eventually see yourself going?
Just the autonomy factor of owning, I think, my true identity, of knowing that, like, I felt best when I came up with an idea and put it out there and saw the results from it. And just knowing that I learned so much from working for people, and that helped build structure and so on. But I knew that, like, when I had an idea, it felt so much better that I put in the work. Maybe it was making my first YouTube video in like 7-8 years ago or whatever the case was. And it was cheesy. It was like how to make like protein brownies or something like that. But that step of just, some people laughed, but knowing that I heard it helped a couple people.
Right.
And I knew that I wanted to be doing some sort of active service, and the more little things that I did that I got to take ownership from, like that was my idea, and then I got some feedback like, oh, thanks for doing that or whatever. let me know I was in the right direction. And I loved that so much that I wanted to feel that on a bigger level. And then, like I said, I volunteered to do a speaking event at like Whole Foods, and I thought 10 people were going to show up, and like 40 people showed up. And I was like, wow, this is real compared to where I came from. And it was like to see the heads nod. And then after the event, people came up to me and said thank you and asked some questions. Like, to me, that was huge. I felt like what I was doing was making a little bit of a difference. And I loved that feeling. I wanted to be, and I loved that feeling more than the feeling of working for somebody and maybe getting a paycheck or a bonus or something that I didn't. Right. Yeah, there's some integrity. It wasn't like I was doing it without integrity, but it was like there's so much more value in knowing it was something that I created and put it out there. And then I just realized that I was trying to define what that big level was of doing that, and looking what other people had done, not in the exact industry or whatever, but looking at that and comparing that and seeing what transferable skills or whatever or actions I could add to mine. And it came down to consistency, and then you build consistency by the accountability. People are like, hey, I like what you're doing. Are you still doing that type of thing? And it got me just realizing that there was a use for it, and learning as I was going. So it was the progress of learning, reviewing, and staying excited about it. It was like I still am. It's like I'm fascinated about putting that out there and sharing that.
Right.
Getting
I like that
response.
And then for you, Durs, like I've seen your transition even from me meeting you last year, first stepping in the gym. I remember where you were last when we first met. First Point, had your website. Now you're 2 iterations in on a website. Ebook launched. You're doing videos, daily Durs and stuff. Just seeing your transition's been amazing. For you, where was the starting point, and where do you see yourself ending up as far as like where are your targets set?
Like for me, I came into 2016 with the ultimate goal of being seen as a fitness professional in the same esteem and a businessman as Jason Khalipa, somebody I really look up to. He's an amazing athlete, but he's probably even a better businessman. And he's got an amazing family. So he's somebody that I really look up to, and those are 3 very important facets of my life: my family, my business, and my fitness. And seeing his evolution, because he's actually the one that proctored my level 1. So I've been in the same space with him. I've seen the aura that he gives off, and seeing his energy and his command presence when he walks in the room. And then what I realized about myself is I'm not particularly blessed with any awesome skills. I just work really hard. So the biggest lesson I had to learn coming into 2016 as I'm pushing this vehicle forward is that delegation is going to be my best friend. And that was a tough pill for me to swallow, because I like to be in control of everything. Right. But when I understood that my creative genius lies in the big picture and the vision, not necessarily the process, I'm now in a position where I can focus on the development of business and not the processes of business.
Right.
So I spent the first couple of months of the year really putting the pieces in place so that the gym is doing what the gym is supposed to do, so that I have the time to really build out these other facets of my life, launching the ebook, getting this podcast up and running, and taking a lot of ideas that were sitting in the queue and bringing them to the forefront. And in the execution of that delegation was finding the people whose creative genius lied in the gaps that needed to be filled, so that they get fulfillment from their role in my process. And so they're not only am I growing as a person through this process, but they're also allowed to grow in their creative geniuses as well. So it's a reciprocal relationship where it's mutually beneficial.
I like it.
And learning that has taken everything about my life to the next level. And so that, like, for me, that was the biggest lesson I've learned
Nice.
in my evolution. So
I like that.
Yes.
Because a lot of people look at, delegation, they don't use that word, but they look at it as, passing the buck or an excuse to be lazy. Because when you're in the trenches and you're the one being delegated to, in a lot of situations, you don't see what's going on behind the scenes.
Right.
I just so happen to be fortunate enough position where, any and everybody that I delegate to understands everything that I'm working on.
Right.
And they see that, they're not only feeding their own personal fires, and being assisted with that, but also they know that there's something bigger on the horizon.
Right.
They get to be a part of that,
Right.
and creating that family, that culture where the support is there. That ride or die mentality has been absolutely amazing. So it's not necessarily an excuse to take your foot off the brake, but more of an excuse to step on the gas and pursue other opportunities that make the whole that much better.
Right. See, I find that interesting because just listening to both of you, you can see the commonality that you both have, like from where you started and where you continue to grow, or where you continue to expand. And it's a process of what I deem it as you continue to make yourself be uncomfortable in any situation,
Right.
and understand to assess your personal, your pros and your cons of like what you're best at and what you're not best at, and being able to release some of those tasks, because we all want to be at that point like, I'm the master, I have to hold the reins all the time. But trusting that letting go and having the letting go is the fear portion. I think of it in my mind is like letting go of that fear of that things aren't going to get done if I'm not the one managing this situation. I think that's just powerful with like what you guys say to me, or what you guys just said, because it shows. Sorry about that. It shows that your success continues to manifest itself through the process of growth for what you guys are continuing to do. So,
yeah, to add to what Durs was saying is, when you delegate, it's not like you have to feel like you have all this authority that you're bringing somebody else. That's just a way of teaming up and partnering up to launch maybe two minds now that can move into a bigger direction. Like, if you can look at anybody else that you're collaborating with of thinking, how is this going to benefit both of us, like the win-win situation, they talk about in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you can look at that situation as a win-win, both people are going to be more motivated, and then they'll see how that's going to help both parties out. And that's like, if you feel like there's a skill set, like you need to help building a website, who do you know that is comfortable with websites? And if you don't have very much money, what is something that you could offer to them or help them out of that would help them out to help each other out?
Right.
And you got to look at that in a lot of situations. And in some cases, like, if you have a product and you're trying to distribute it, who's somebody that's in distribution that you can help them out? Maybe, and just think about how you can work together, because you helping somebody else out. And if you look at that route, that is going to make it that much more likely that it's going to happen. And don't let that stop you by any means if you can't figure it out. But like, think about that when you're partnering up. Is there somebody else that you can partner with that gets them to buy into it, that's worth their time? Because if you just come to somebody and say, hey, I got this good idea, if it seems like it's your good idea and there's not a lot in it for them, like just because you think it's giving them experience, like make sure that person's buying into it, that's the experience that they want, or whatever the case is, because it's like, I remember I put a car for sale on Craigslist, and you get people that make you all these like trade offers. And some guys like, I'll trade you a dirt bike and like $250 for a car. I was like, well, if I was in the market for a dirt bike, that'd be awesome. And like, thanks for the courage and the entertaining offer, but like you have to make sure it's relevant at the same time as well. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
that's awesome.
But I love that guy was taking action. Maybe he called 20 people. Maybe one of them's like, shoot, actually I kind of do want a dirt bike, and this is an extra car, and I'll trade it over. So think about those types of things. If he would have said, something that was more relevant, involving the money that I wanted, or something that was getting me closer to my goal, shoot, I might have taken advantage of that.
Sure. So, ultimately, we'll go ahead and close this out today. Don't let the fear of process get in the way of taking those initial steps towards, your ultimate goal, whatever it is that you're working on. You don't need all the pieces in place immediately. What is required is only 2 things. That's commitment and action. And once you do those things, once you get those underway, the rest, the process just inevitably takes care of itself.
That's true.
You might feel a little awkward and stupid or whatever you want to define it at first, but everybody goes through that process. It's just how you decide to handle it, and you got something bigger in mind. So you might be a little unfamiliar, probably will be, but everybody else around you went through that same setup. So take that step forward.
Yep.
So follow us at Feed Me Fuel Me on all social media platforms. You can follow me on my personal stuff. You can look at facebook.com/Coach Stirs and at Coach Stirs everywhere else. Where can we find you boys?
Yeah, so find us on at Feed Me Fuel Me on all social media. I am Jeff Thornton on all social media for my personal accounts, and then we'll link everybody's information up in the show notes as well. So you can find us on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, and yeah, that's where we'll go.
Yes. Awesome. And find me at Jason Sani, JASONSANI, all social media platforms.
Awesome.
I like
well,
it,
hey,
Jen.
thanks for tuning in. That's episode 2. And by all means, reach out to us any and everywhere in cyberspace and let us know if there's any subjects that you want us to tackle. And, we'll definitely evolve to bringing guests to, knock those things out of the park for you.
Yeah, let's grow together.
That's it. Feed me fuel, baby. Let's do it. Oh. There you have it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to check out the full show notes and get connected with us at feedmefuelme.com. Also, subscribe to all of our information across social media at feedmefuelme. We're looking forward to connecting with each and every one of you. As Lao Tzu said, there is no process without principle.